Howdy, Space Rangers, Captain Phoenix here. So, I saw Thor Love and Thunder, and I have some thoughts about it. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, now, because I have a lot to say about this movie, I'm gonna go back to an old tradition I used to do, where I talk about the different aspects of the movie, like the story, the characters, the action, the execution, the writing, all that stuff. I don't think it's gonna be super linear, so forgive me if I do switch from one topic to another real quick, but I feel like I gotta just get a lot of this stuff off my chest. So let's start with number one, the story. This story to me is the most confusing part of the movie, and I feel like my biggest problem with this movie is the fact that it doesn't want to tell its story. Now, I'm not gonna bore you here with what the story of Thor Love and Thunder is. That's what the trailers are for. They're supposed to give you a feel of what the movie is. And if I try to recap the story, I'm gonna be here forever. But basically, this movie is trying to be a rom-com, also, but also a superhero movie talking about the fate of the universe and whatnot. It's like if it's like this movie is trying to be like 50 First Dates, a rom-com. That's literally the only rom-com I've probably ever seen, but like it's trying to be 50 First Dates meets Infinity War, but with kind of smaller stakes. That's what this movie is, and I don't kind of think it works, mostly due to its villain, but also with the whole story in general, because the story this movie is trying to do is show that all the gods around the universe are in danger and we have to go save them. And at the same time, we have like Jane and her cancer, and Thor trying to get back into a relationship with Jane. We get to see how all these big, wild changing stories kind of collide. But at the same time, we have the story be Gore has kidnapped children and he's kind of just having fun with them. I don't know. I feel like this story is kind of the wrong story for the wrong movie. And there's this guy I saw, Captain Midnight. In fact, this is his video right now. I'll probably link it in the description below and yeah, in the comments or whatever. But he said a line that I think I relate to a lot. He said this movie almost seems mad that it has to tell a story, and that's why I feel like it's doing a lot of. Taika Waititi, the director, he's also made Thor Ragnarok, kind of has seems to be wanting to tell a rom-com story, just a fun traveling through space and galaxy story that just happens to have Thor in it. But at the same time, he wants to tell the God Butcher story. And he's like, I don't want to tell it. Like, you feel this energy of, no, I just want there to be jokes throughout this film. I don't want there to be any story. I just want $1 million or millions of dollars to make this movie, but I don't want any story attached to it. I just want to have jokes and cool action with nonsense and a very loose plot tying it all together. I don't care about the story.
Okay? You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
And you kind of feel that throughout this movie. The story kind of suffers in this movie, mostly due to the fact that it feels like two completely separate entities being smooshed into one. A rom com and a high stakes end of the world story are like trying to get married here, and it kind of doesn't work. Which leads me to talk about the next thing, the tone. And I feel like if I was to talk about the biggest problem this movie has is the tone. And don't worry, I'm not gonna talk crap about this movie forever. I'm gonna talk about some good stuff, but I need to talk about this issue first because it bothers me. This movie has too much humor in it, and trust me, I am the last guy that should be saying this.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Saying this, I love humor. I love jokes. I love the MCU for its humor. It's really funny. I love it to death. You guys have seen me talk about memes and all that stuff. I love my humor. However, this movie just seems to take it up a notch. And it's very weird. Because, like, if we look at a movie like Thor Ragnarok, the one that came before this, Thor Ragnarok seemed to have a balance between its humor and its serious moments. Like, Odin's death was, like, really serious. I don't think there was a single joke throughout that entire thing. Every time Hela was on screen, it was serious. And hell, the fall of Asgard was actually taken kind of seriously. Yeah, there was a joke or two there. But it was at the very least treated as a somber moment. The jokes were meant to kind of help the characters and the audience cope with the big stuff that was going on. In this movie, it's just joke after joke after joke after joke. And don't get me wrong, some of these jokes are funny, but it does kind of lose the weight when you're just bringing on joke after joke after joke. Like, how do I explain it? There's a scene in this movie where Gore kicks our heroes' butts and they come back to Earth. And he steals Stormbreaker. But Thor is like, I don't really care about Gore. He's not that big of a threat to me. I'ma just take the lightning bolt and go back up to him. It's not like, it's more that Thor was worried about the safety of his team rather than having his butt kicked by Gore, and Gore is gonna win and go to the center of the universe. Like, if Gore gets to the center of the universe, everyone Thor knows, including himself, will die. but he's more worried about like Jane and her cancer, which is like fine and whatnot. It's fine for Thor to be worried about someone else on a smaller scale, but like this would be like the equivalent of if Infinity War, Tony worried more about Peter dying than keeping the stone safe or destroying it, which is basically what happened at the end when Thanos won. But here's the thing: Tony only started caring for Peter after Thanos took the stone. He wasn't like, "Kid, are you okay? Kid, are you okay?" and always focusing on Peter during the fight. Like, I don't know, man. It's just very weird. And like, plus in that situation, Tony could really not do anything. Whereas in this movie, Thor really could do something. He went to go after Gore. But I feel like that's where the huge difference is. Thor never took Gore as a serious threat, whereas Tony really took Thanos as a serious threat. And I feel like this tone is very much carried throughout the movie, where you don't even get scared of Gore as a villain or his big motivation or big final plan, because not even the characters in universe are scared of him and his big motivation and plan. So you really feels kind of you feel like there's a link broken. You don't feel the scariness or the weight of the situation because the characters don't feel it because they're busy cracking jokes every 5 seconds. And I feel like this only works. Like Gore was really only at his scariest in the Shadow Realm when they went to go fight him, and like he like closes their mouths and like he has these venom tentacles attacking them and whatnot. I feel like that was the only truly threatening part of the movie because not only do we see what Gore could really be like, but at the same time, it also shows like at the same time, no one's quipping. All of their mouths have been covered. So with no one quipping, we actually get to see what Gore can really do as a villain. So I feel like that's this movie's biggest problem, the tone. It wants to be lighthearted like Ragnarok, but at the same time, it wants to up the ante from Ragnarok. And I feel like that's the biggest problem. Because as I mentioned, Ragnarok knew when to have the heavy moments and at the same time have the comedic moments. When Thor was on screen, that was a comedic moment. When Hela was on screen, that was a scary or threatening moment. And they should have done that with this movie. Every time Gore was on screen, that should have been a heavy moment with like one or two jokes in a scene, but that was it. Instead, it's every throughout the movie. When Gore is on screen, there's a joke. When Thor is on screen, there's a joke, and it gets very messy, in my opinion. However, now that I've talked about the humor, let's talk about what I actually liked in this movie. The humor. This movie had a lot of good jokes. First of all, we had the screaming goats thing, which, by the way, I remember I've seen the reviews for this movie. Everyone hates the screaming goats. They're like, "Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's so boring. They're trying to relive an old dead meme. They should stop trying. Oh my gosh, this script was written by old men." And I'm like, first of all, it's not that bad. I will agree. The Screaming Goats is not funny. I wasn't rolling in my seat, but it wasn't that bad. I'm not that annoyed. They did not take me out of the film. I noticed when they were screaming, but I never felt like just like no, this movie's bad 0 out of 10. I never felt like that. So I feel like you guys are just being too mean. One thing that did make me laugh out loud in this movie multiple times was the Stormbreaker and the Mjolnir shtick, where Thor is like feeling jealous for Mjolnir. He's like, "Oh, Mjolnir, you're back, but why are you going to Jane and not me?" And then like that scene where he's like trying to call Mjolnir to him, and then Stormbreaker just comes up on his side like, "Hey, buddy."
What you up to, bro? Come to daddy. Hey, there you are. Hey. I was just calling you.
Like I like how the hammers are not really sentient, but they have so much personality, and the fact that you can put that much personality into inanimate objects, I love it. Again, even in the finale, where like Stormbreaker is forced to open the Bifrost, Thor is like, "Come on, Stormbreaker, this isn't like you. Cut it out." I was dying. It was hilarious. So I will admit, there were funny parts in this movie, which I just absolutely loved. And I even love the scene where Zeus like just removes Thor's disguise. It was funny in the trailer, and it was funny in the movie. I just love that scene. It was hilarious. Also, Chris Hemsworth doing them jacks. This dude is keeping fit, I tell you. But yeah. So I will admit the humor was funny. Other times though, this movie got campy and just kind of silly, and it really and this kind of goes back to the tone with this movie just kind of feeling like a kids movie. Like I feel like this is something I would find on like TV, a superhero show, like in the early 2010s, or like those little superhero movies, or like the B movies with kids in them from like the early to late 2000s. You guys know what I mean? And I feel like this really comes to light in the finale, because in the finale Thor goes to save the kids and he gives them his powers, And then it's just a full-on battle scene. Thor and the kids versus Gore and his army. And instead of feeling impressed, I was like, this is silly.
My goofy uncle is holding me captive.
I didn't know whether to love it or to be angry at it, but now after letting the film sit in my mind for a bit, I'm very baffled. And I don't like that scene at all. Why are there kids fighting monsters? Don't give me the whole Asgardian alienness. It's their kids. Like, even if I'm supposed to take it seriously, which I don't, it just doesn't make sense. Ragnarok ended with Thor and Korg and Valkyrie all like rushing into battle scene. Hell, even Loki was there being like your saviors. Yeah, it felt like a real on finale. Hell, Surtur joined in the chaos. It actually felt. Hell, Hulk fought a wolf. That was a finale. This movie has kids fighting monsters a la Stranger Things, from what I've heard. Like, I'm sorry, but that's a downgrade. Even Thor wasn't as threatening in this final battle. I gotta say, he was kind of silly with that little screaming face he made. It just, I was very confused.
So I am confusion.
I'm not gonna lie, this movie was good, but it just felt straight up kiddish at times. And speaking of which, let's talk about Gore. So I guess we're in the character segment of the video, but more specifically on Gore, because I have a lot to say about this guy. He might as well have his own segment of the video. So here we go. Gore the God Butcher. First of all, for someone named Gore, I feel like we should go in more gore from him. I'm not the first person to say this, nor do I think I'll be the last, but there should have been more gore in this movie. He should have killed more gods on screen at least. Because, like, he kills a god at the very beginning of the movie. He kills a bunch of them off screen. And the only way we know is, like, through Thor watching, like, the news on other planets. That's, like, happening on other planets. And then we don't see Gore coming until, like, the middle of the movie. Like, not even till the middle, like, near the end of the movie with the Shadow Realm. And then he, like, beats them up. Doesn't kill anyone, mind you. And then he shows up at the end. Where, again, he gets bested by children. Like, I don't know, man. I get this movie wants to be more lighthearted and comedic, but I really feel like it could have been strengthened by Gore having killing gods left, right, and center. And I feel, especially, he should have been to Omnipotent City. Before I say that, though, one more complaint I gotta give on Gore is how he interacts with the children. First of all, he kidnaps the children at the beginning of the movie. Again, very much like an early 2000s movie, like traps them in a cage and then teleports away with them. He's like, ooh, come and get the children if you dare, Thor. Come face my wrath. Again, it was very silly. But then he starts toying with the children, talking about like lopping off their heads and saying, I knew a girl like you. She was very sweet, but she died because the gods let her down. It was very silly. Like in the first half of this movie, I could not take God as a serious villain. Again, I only took him seriously once they got to the Shadow Realm. I'm like, okay, now he's a cool villain. In the finale, he wasn't as bad as he was in the first half. I really liked to go a lot more in the second half of the movie, but that was not a great first impression. Again, I feel like with the Necrosword, when you go to the Necrosword, he's like, this is my vow. All gods will die. I'm like, this is sick. Next time we see him, he's in New Asgard acting like a silly cartoon villain. And I'm like, what? But then he's cool again in the Shadow Realm. Obviously, Christian Bale plays him excellently. I love Christian Bale. Honestly, my favorite actors from this film was definitely Chris Hemsworth as Thor. He just did a fantastic job. And Christian Bale as Gore. I loved watching these two. Definitely would love to see them in future projects. Obviously, we're gonna get a Thor 5, but I don't know about Gore. I feel like he's gone for good, which is sad. I really wish Christian Bale would become like an official part of the MCU, but what you gonna do, you know? But then we have Omnipotent City, which, first of all, cool concept. I love the fact that we have like this city of the gods, and we have gods from like all different religions and backgrounds and regions. It was really cool. I do wish we got to see more of them though. Like this would have been a really cool way to tie in Moon Knight, because like Moon Knight deals with Egyptian gods, and in this movie we get to see both Greek and Norse gods. So like just tying Egyptian in there would have been cool. Like we didn't even need to see Khonshu. If we saw someone like Anubis or Ra or Osiris, I would have been fine with that. Like hell, Thor does mention Ra earlier in the movie. Why didn't we get to see him? I don't know, man. But I feel like with Omnipotent City, they really should have had Gore there. Like he's a god butcher. He should have been there killing people left, right, and center. Everyone is screaming around for their lives. We could have had so many gods like get on their cool chariots or like get their cool weapons and like attack Gore. Like Zeus throwing his lightning bolt, or Ares on his chariot of dogs, or Ra using like sun powers against him. We could have had some really cool fight scenes. But for some reason, this film felt like it was cut for time, and it just had Thor fighting the gods and then dipping. And it wasn't even like actual gods, it was like guards. So it wasn't even I felt let down, honestly. I felt like from a city of gods, we should have had way more gods and way more action scenes. And it feels like they actually did do more, but they cut it out of the movie for some weird reason. I honestly feel like with this movie, they cut out a lot of footage and scenes that were supposed to be here, but they cut it for time, which is weird because this movie is like about 2 hours long, very standard for a Marvel movie. But in an age of Marvel movies where we get movies like 2.5 hours long, I feel like I don't know, just a scene of gore actually butchering gods would have been cool. But it does tie into my complaint of this feels like the wrong movie for the wrong story. An actual God the God Butcher movie should have been darker or at least had a heavier tone. That way, when he's killing gods, we get to see the action scenes and we get to be sucked into them. But because it's a rom com superhero movie, the focus is not on the action, but on the romance, on the story, and the comedy, which, again, I don't mind. But for this kind of story, they do not clash well, which is why I say it's very much a problem. Though, if we're talking about the action, I will say the action is obviously top notch. I love the opening scene with Thor, where we just get to see how truly OP this guy is when he's like fighting the owl aliens with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I loved his big speech, and then he just goes crazy with them. Love that scene. Obviously, when he comes to New Asgard to help, I love seeing Lady Thor or Jane there or Mighty Thor, whatever she's called in the comics. And obviously, the Shadow Realm was one of the best scenes in the movie. The finale, as I mentioned, is silly. I cannot take it seriously. But aside from that, I feel like every action scene with Thor is good. Even Omnipotent City, where like he destroys Zeus with his own lightning bolt, perfection. So I really can't complain about the action. But you could tell there were more priorities this movie had to deal with. Like, look at this scream. You expect me to take that scream seriously? Let's talk about the characters real quick aside from that. So I already talked about Gore, and I really like him as a villain. Like on a concept level, he's a really good villain. Again, in the Shadow Realm, I really love that scene where he's like tied up Thor, Jane, and Valkyrie, and he's like kind of relating to them on different levels. To Thor, he hates Thor because, Thor's a god. He hates Valkyrie, or at the very least, he picks on Valkyrie saying, "Yo, remember when you and your sisters died? And you were let down by your god because Odin sent them into that fight. Yeah, now look where you are now." And to Jane, he's like, "Jane, you and I are not so different. You're dying of a disease. I'm dying of the necrosword. So we're not even that different." I really like how the movie wrote him into having beef with each and every one of those characters in the scene. It was really cool.
God damn, Jimmy. This some serious gourmet shit.
Thor, as mentioned, I love Chris Hemsworth playing Thor. He was entertaining throughout the whole movie. People were saying he was exceptionally dumb in this movie. I personally didn't see it. I thought he just acted like normal Thor. Honestly, I kind of expected this from him. Considering he's around Jane for most of the movie, I did expect him to be kind of giddy and aloof at times. Really, the only times where I thought he was just kind of being a bit weird was when he was trying to give his hero speeches and failing at them. And I'm like, bro, you did one at the beginning of the movie. Why are you faltering now? But otherwise, I was fine with Thor's character. I loved what's this, Natalie Portman as the mighty Thor, and how she was kind of a rookie at this hero thing. She kind of didn't know what she was trying to do. I really like that whole fish out of water story. It's kind of a parallel to the first Thor movie where Thor was new on Earth and didn't know what to do, and Jane had to show him the ropes. In this movie, she has superpowers, and now Thor has to show her the ropes. I really like that nice parallel. And though I will say that people were complaining about her acting, saying that Natalie Portman just does not work as a lady, as a mighty Thor. I was fine with it, except for the end credit scene where she gets into Valhalla. That was some real bad acting. You could tell she was just like, "Can we get this over with? I am done for the day." Like it was some awkwardness going on. How did that make the final cut? Ugh.
Oh shit.
And then we have Valkyrie and Korg, who are like, okay, they were just there to be the comic reliefs, honestly. Like, from the trailers, it looked like Valkyrie was gonna have a more serious role in this film, but no, she and Korg were just kind of tied to being the comic reliefs in a movie that was all about comedy. Like, I can't remember a single meaningful thing Korg did other than he died, sort of, and then he made that whistle to the goats. That was it. So, yeah, no, very strange decision to keep those two. I understand why they kept Korg, because everyone loves Korg, but Valkyrie, like, weirdly enough, she did not have a place in this movie that much. Also, I thought this movie was gonna kill off Thor. I thought this was gonna be his last movie, considering he's the only one of the original Avengers to get like 4 movies. Because everyone else always caps out at 3. Even Spider Man only has 3. So I thought Thor was only gonna get like his 4th movie and then peace out. But no, it seems like he's gonna get a 5th one. And honestly, this movie was serving to kill Jane, not him. and I thought Jane was gonna take over for him as the mighty Thor. So interesting. Marvel broke up their weird formula just ever so slightly. Interesting. I don't know how I feel about that personally. By the way, for those who are thinking I'm complaining about the humor, let me just say, be very clear right now. This is not Taika Waititi's fault. I do not blame Taika Waititi for the humor in this film. Nor do I blame him for like including it in his own style to it. Reason I say this is because when Thor Ragnarok came out, the one thing everyone was saying is, yes, we love this Thor, we love this humor. Please give us more humor, give us more Thor. And Taika was like, okay, I'm giving the people what they want, and that's why he made this movie more funny. I do think that he should have toned it down a bit, but I do not for a second blame him because this is what the fans asked for. And now these very same fans are complaining about there being too much humor in this movie. They're freaking hypocrites. I don't like this nonsense. Go to hell. So the fans who are complaining about too many jokes and blaming Taika for being off his groove and not using the jokes properly. No, you asked him for this. Like, I don't blame him, but whatever. And lastly, let's talk about the ending because the ending is like it's apparently also like its own subsection of this video. The ending of this movie is very sweet. I found it to be very sweet. We have Jane dying and Thor now adopting Gor's daughter, Love, and now he becomes Uncle Thor to her, or I guess now her new dad, which again is a parallel to the first movie where Odin adopted Loki, a kid who was not his own, but he decided to raise him as one. And now we have Thor adopting Love because she was born of the love that he and Jane had, and Go was like, oh, that's so sweet, and then he gets Love. Also, can I just say, Eternity in this movie looked cool. Wish we got to see more of them, what they could do, what more they could do. But since they're like this all powerful being, we won't see them for another 10 movies or something. But yeah, no, Love was definitely cute. I think she's actually Chris Hemsworth's daughter. So the fact that now father and daughter might be acting together in movies from now on, that's pretty cool. I dig it. I'm behind it. It's cool. But yeah, and then I like the end of this movie where she and Thor fight together. Though I am very annoyed that Thor got Mjolnir back. My guy, Stormbreaker is better. Move on. Like, he looks so ridiculous holding that tiny thing. He looks cooler when he's holding Stormbreaker. Like, I get it. This is Thor's character. He loves Mjolnir. It was his first weapon. But give the goddamn hammer to the child. He's worthy of it. Keep Stormbreaker. Instead, she gets Stormbreaker, and this little child is carrying this weapon that's like twice her size. I can't take it seriously. Like, why would you give Thor Mjolnir back? It does not make no sense whatsoever. But it's whatever. Obviously, this movie left me wanting more. I definitely want to see more of Dad Thor in the future. And we got to find out that Hercules is going to be a somewhat villain in the next movie. He's not the main villain, but he is going to be fighting Thor. And that is a fight I am dying to see. We saw how Thor went against Zeus. I do wish that fight was better, lightning on lightning, but he just kind of took Zeus's thunderbolt and ended it there. But now we get to see Thor versus Hercules, who truly is stronger. Imagine if we get a Hercules versus Hulk movie. Now that would be just amazing. And yeah, this movie definitely left me wanting more. I am very excited for Thor 5, but on this movie alone, if I'm talking about this movie just as a movie and how much I enjoyed it, it's 6 out of 10 on a bad day, 7 out of 10 on a good day. Right now, I am thinking of the stuff I enjoyed from it, especially the Mjolnir Stormbreaker relationship. That just was the funniest thing in this movie. So I will say it's a 7 out of 10 for now, but it is by far not the best Marvel movie in a while. I still think Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is a better movie. I still think No Way Home is a better movie. But hey, this movie's better than Eternals, Black Widow, and Shang-Chi, so there's something going for it. Honestly, Marvel should just stick to the remaining characters it has now and make movies off them. Because this new generation of heroes they're trying to do, I don't know if it's winning anyone over. Aside from Moon Knight, I really don't know if anyone's winning anyone over. Like, is anyone even talking about Miss Marvel? Really? But yeah, those are my thoughts on Thor, Love and Thunder. And I gotta say, I am not happy with the way this year is going. 2022 is really laying me down when it comes to shows and movies, and I am just so tired of it. Aside from Attack on Titan, which like came out in January of all times, everything this year has just been pretty good to horrible. Nothing has been exceptional or great. So please, back half of 2022, everything from July to December, I am begging you, have at least one movie or TV show that doesn't make this year feel like a complete waste. I'm begging you, give me something to love and something to show that Hollywood doesn't lack originality and good stories. Even though it probably always did, or at least show me media these days not mediocre. Because right now, Marvel and Star Wars, they are not giving me the same hits that they were like a year or two ago. Like, I want another Clone Wars Season 7. I want another Mandalorian. I want another No Way Home. Give me something to spice things up, you know what I'm saying? But in the meantime, I guess most movies and shows I'm seeing now are just like 6 to 8 out of 10, the average group. And I guess 9s and 10s are reserved only for Attack on Titan because the only art we get is from Japan now. But yeah, Hollywood, do something cool. Anyways, guys, this review has gone on for too long. I promised it was going to be fast, but apparently I am a liar. So please forgive me for that. Be sure to like if you like, subscribe if you haven't, hit that notification bell to be part of the team, slap a cow, or in this case, a goat, and don't cheat on your weapons, people. Your weapons make you. They chose you. And yeah, with that, I will see you in another universe. Goodbye, my rangers. Love or blunder.